it's funny if you go back and look at some of the villains and their plots, and see how they've played out, differently over time. It's almost like the Simpsons, when the Simpsons predicts things in the future. I feel like you could go back in some of the Bond films and kind of pinpoint things that we ended up seeing actually happening.
I figured I kind of wanted to zero in on something specific and talk to you about the cold open, which I think has been noted as like one of the first to not feature Bond in quite a few films. But I was also struck by how like uniquely horrifying it is. And so I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about the impetus behind that scene and what sort of tone you wanted that to set for the rest of the film.
For the Bond fans, they should recognize the anecdote that we're, recreating with some new information. I also wanted people to think it might be Bond initially, like good old classic, sort of Roger Moore in a ski suit Bond. Mm-hmm. But I think it was just the tone should have been, thrilling. It should have had a suspense thrilling, not necessarily horror, but, scary. It should feel scary. And
I think that you do kind of bring the actual terror of some of these situations to the forefront. Like, obviously, these Bond movies, they're always thrilling. There's always a sense of danger, but I think you make it feel very real and very palpable. And I wondered how much of a concerted effort there was to make this horror, I guess, feel real.
Yeah, I mean, the no mask, which is now we've seen it in the trailer and the teaser and stuff, so I can say that, at least, is a pretty spine-tingling piece of Japanese theater, and outside of the context of no theater, it's just a weird-looking thing. That the blank stare, it's kind of, I've liked masks, even going back to True Detective, playing around with masks, or maybe go back to Sin Nombre, like, the tattoo covered faces. There's something about changing, the way the brain can interpret the figure of a mask that to me is fun to play with. I think also just the intention was just to make it a ride from the beginning, and just really craft something that is on the one hand, frightening, but on the other hand feels dangerous and as scary as the rest of the film should be. I think that also comes from something that Barbara Broccoli told me when we were writing, which is like, the way she likes to think about the dangers in these Bond films is what is the scariest thing out there. I think having that freedom sort of allowed me to kind of go that direction with the opening scene.
This franchise has certainly evolved with what is the scariest thing out there. I mean, we see that in this movie, and even the way it kind of ties into like some of our fears truly in the real world right now with the pandemic and that sort of thing. This franchise has always kind of been able to like pinpoint, the zeitgeist, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah, it's funny if you go back and look at some of the villains and their plots, and see how they've played out, differently over time, it's almost like the Simpsons, when the Simpsons predicts things in the future. I feel like you could go back in some of the Bond films and kind of pinpoint things that we ended up seeing actually happening.
I just wanted to ask specifically again about this opening scene. An amazing setting. I know you built the set. Did that produce any specific challenges?
Yeah, I mean, like I knew I wanted to shoot on the ice, and we were running out of time basically because like didn't even finish the first draft of the screenplay, and that was really just the first half of the screenplay by Christmas. And we're supposed to start production in March, and in all of our research, there's basically no frozen lakes left, like in continental Europe. So we had to go to Norway, and like we thought we had like a 2-week window to do it, and we got like a word like 2 weeks before that it was going to be unseasonably warm that month. So like we had a rush up there, and set design, production design had already built the home on this lake, and we get there and they're like, well, the good news is it's not unfrozen yet, but the bad news is the house is sinking into the lake. And we get there and we see the house is like starting to go down. So it was very tricky to try and get that done right. And the other thing is, I'd scouted it a few times. We got to Norway, in the preceding months a couple of times, and I saw it in these beautiful sort of fog-filled days, this very moody fog-filled days. And we got there, and the entire week we shot, it was sunny. So I would have to wait for a cloud to shoot this thing. So there was plenty of challenges while we were doing it.
We used to be able to get into a room with the enemy. Now they're just floating in the ether.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
Oh my God. Target enough people.
And the people become the weapon.